In light of the growing concerns about COVID-19, NeighborWorks of Western Vermont is providing this helpful video about budgeting during a crisis. Although I will be referring to the current pandemic, this information can be applied during any crisis. During this video, we will learn how to prioritize our expenses and debts during a crisis, and resources that may be available, and how to make changes to live within our means. What are some unexpected events that can happen to us? The first ones that come to mind are illness and temporary or permanently being laid off, especially during a pandemic. Unexpected events can happen to all of us and without warning. So, how do we budget when we are in a crisis beyond our control? When most of us do not even have enough money in our savings to cover a $1,000 emergency expense, it may be time for crisis budgeting. Budgeting is important, but even more so when we live on a fixed income or during a crisis. A zero based budget, also known as a crisis budget, is a visual tool that helps us think about our new income, how to prioritize our expenses, and make adjustments. We may need to reduce or eliminate some expenses and debts until the crisis is over. So, how do we start? We start by determining the monthly money we now have available to pay expenses with. Then we determine what our expenses are and list them in order of priority. Keep in mind, what is considered high priority to one family member may not be considered high priority to another member. There is no right or wrong answer. So let's start looking at different expenses and get some ideas on how they should be prioritized. Let's talk about housing. Whether we rent or own our home, housing is at the top of the priority list. Although there are protections put in place during the current pandemic, once the pandemic is over, foreclosures and evictions can resume. We all need a roof over our heads, and if we do not pay our housing expenses, we are putting our families at risk of becoming homeless. When we own our home, if we do not pay our property taxes, our property can be put up for a tax sale. Not paying the home insurance can put us at risk of liability and even loss of our home. No matter what crisis we are facing, it is important to start talking with our mortgage company or landlord immediately. They may have options available. If you need assistance, contact a housing counselor for help. What about utilities? During the current pandemic, some of the utility companies are suspending shutoffs, but we need to ask for the help. It is not automatic. Once the pandemic is over, if we can't bring them current or make a payment plan we can stick to, we may face shutoffs. Let's look at some ways we can avoid this. Review any unnecessary services that could be suspended or eliminated altogether. If we have a cell phone and a landline, do we need both? Can one be eliminated or suspended? What about cable? If we have the internet, can we do just Netflix for now since it's cheaper? Or can we get a cheaper cable package? Now let's look at food, also high on the priority list. We all love and need to eat, but there are some ways to trim this expense as well. We may not have had to ask for help in the past, but during a crisis or pandemic, we all need some help. We can't let our pride get in the way of getting what we need. Applying for state food benefits and utilizing local food shelves can help reduce or eliminate this cost for us, even if it is temporary. These programs are not requiring documentation of income or need during the pandemic, so it is easier to get help. Other ways we can reduce this expense is by sticking to the basics. Plan out meals by making a menu plan and use a grocery list to prevent buying more than we need. Using coupons or buying store brand food versus name brand and making cheaper meals, making enough for leftovers. Healthcare is one of the first expenses that we look at putting on the back burner, but by doing so, we are putting ourselves at greater risk, especially during a pandemic. Believe it or not, there are ways to reduce this cost. We can ask our physician and pharmacist about ways to reduce this expense without having to eliminate these services. There may be prescription discounts available, and we can utilize community healthcare programs to save. If we do not have health insurance or we have lost it due to being laid off, we can apply for the state health insurance. They are not requiring documentation of income or need during the pandemic for these services. What about other insurance premiums, such as auto insurance, home insurance, and rental insurance? If we do not have sufficient coverage, we are putting ourselves at risk of future liability. Some things we can do include researching cheaper plans. maybe temporarily increasing our deductible to save us money on our premiums. Now let's talk about debt. There are secured debts and unsecured debts. Secured debts are secured by our possessions, whether that be our vehicles, homes, recreation equipment, etc. Non payment of these types of debts can result in loss of those possessions. During a crisis or pandemic, we all need help. We can't put our other expenses at risk by avoiding asking for help. We need to talk with our lenders. They are expecting their customers to call and ask for help during the pandemic. Our lenders may be able to offer interest only payment, offer a forbearance, or other options to assist us. No matter what our lenders offer us, we need to understand what we are agreeing to. For example, some lenders structure forbearances differently. One lender could structure theirs by putting the deferred payments at the end of the loan, and other lenders could require full payment of the deferment at the end of the agreement. If we are still struggling to make payments after the pandemic ends, we need to contact our lenders for additional options available. Federal student loan debts are deferred during the pandemic, currently until September 30th, 2020. We do not have to take any action. This does not include any non-federal student loans, so we would need to contact our servicers immediately to determine what options are available to us for any non-federal loans. They may be able to offer deferment temporarily. If we are still struggling to make payments once the deferments end, we can contact our servicers to see if additional assistance is available. If we are already delinquent on our federal student loans during the pandemic, they will not continue to report delinquent during this period. Once the protection period is over, we can contact our servicer to apply for the Student Loan Rehabilitation Program to get them out of the delinquent status. For any IRS tax debts, we can contact the IRS Taxpayer Advocate Service for help. If we pay child support and are unemployed, we can contact the local child support office to see what options are available. Now let's go over unsecured debts. Unsecured debts are credit cards, personal loans, and unsecured lines of credit. Although we are responsible for these debts, they may have to wait. Paying our basic needs and secured debts should come first. Many creditors have already put some assistance in place for their customers during the pandemic. It is not automatic, and we have to contact them and ask for help. If we do not communicate with our creditors and get a plan in place, collection calls will start and it will impact our credit. Remember, when creating any type of budget, it is only successful when all household members are involved and agree with the plan. Now that we discussed how to prioritize expenses, let's look at how to create a crisis budget. Once we have decided as a family how we want to prioritize expenses, we will write down how much money we have available this month to pay our expenses in the top right-hand corner where it says enter your net income. Once we have done that, in the first column, we will start at the base of the form and list our expenses from highest priority to the lowest priority, making sure to list everything. Then in the middle column, we will write how much each one of those expenses cost us. In the last column, we start adding up the expenses and write the totals as we go. We stop once we have hit our available income. Then the next step is to see what changes can be made to cover the remaining expenses. Using some of the tips mentioned in the previous slides, let's look at an example I have done. In the first budget image, it shows that there is not enough money to cover all the expenses. In the second image, we will see that some changes have been made. The first change made was eliminating the eating out and lunches. The second change that was made was suspending the gym membership. The third change that was made was the cable package was eliminated and just internet service kept. Since I have a cell phone, I do not need a house phone as well, and keeping Netflix was cheaper than the cable. Food costs were reduced due to taking advantage of the state food program and utilizing food shelves. The car insurance was reduced by getting quotes for cheaper insurance plans. As you can see, the car payment shows 0. That is due to contacting the lender and asking for 3 months of deferred payments, adding them to the end of the loan. As the example shows, making just a few temporary changes can really help get your budget where it needs to be during a pandemic or crisis. Now, as a family, we have the tools and resources needed to come up with our crisis plan. We will need to review our plan monthly and make necessary adjustments as needed until the crisis has ended and things are back to normal. Once we have come up with a plan that all household members agree on, we need to stick to it and make any necessary adjustments monthly. If you would like help creating a plan for you and your family, think about scheduling an individual coaching session with a housing counselor. For a free copy of this zero based budget template, visit www.nwwvt.org. All of the resources listed in the previous slides are in these next two slides as well.